Rhythm Heaven is a different breed of rhythm game. It's got no popular songs at all, there's no consistent gameplay style, and I don't even know what to make of these. Doesn't really sound like your average rhythm game, does it? But people still hold it in high regard, and it's super popular amongst seasoned rhythm game players and total gaming beginners alike. Hold on a second. Beginners too? How can that be? With a traditional rhythm game, I can make out exactly what's going on by just taking a glance at the screen. You see the up arrow, you step on the up arrow. Easy enough. With Rhythm Heaven, what do I even do here? What do I press? Clearly, there's something deeper at work here, and that's what I'm going to be investigating. By the end of this video, you'll see how and why Rhythm Heaven is more educational, and thus more beginner friendly than other more traditional rhythm games. At the root of this is something called rhythm sense. In its most basic form, your rhythm sense is what allows you to groove along with the songs you hear. It's what you use when you, say, bop your head to your favorite song, or go crazy when the beat drops. If you've ever done these things, chances are you have rhythm sense. Now, let's put this in the context of games. The goal of most rhythm-based games is to do something in time with the things happening on screen. Often, these things on screen are set to music, so you're activating cues in time with the rhythm of the music. You could say then that the better you groove with the music, the better you could potentially do in the game. Enter your rhythm sense. There are 3 key things that your rhythm sense encompasses: picking up a rhythm you hear, staying in time with the rhythm, and recognizing rhythmic patterns. If we focus on these 3 skills, and compare Rhythm Heaven's approach to them with other games, we'll likely get a picture of what makes it so special. Arguably one of the most important parts, you need to be able to recognize what the actual rhythm is. When does each beat fall? How fast is it going? Being able to pick up crucial things like these can help you get a better feel for the music. Ask a professional, and they may start telling you about time signatures, tempo, and other numbers like those. And while the numbers may tell you exactly how the beat sounds, it's hard to actually visualize that unless you can hear it. Take, for example, what's on screen right now. If we start to break this down, we can see 2 notes lasting for 1.5 beats, and 2 notes lasting for 1 beat. The tempo up top tells us how fast to play it too. So we have the beat, right? Well, unless you're used to performing sheet music, I doubt you can tell exactly how this beat sounds. Not to mention, exactly how fast is that BPM? Not sure about you, but I'd need to pull out my metronome. Let's see if listening to it is any easier. Makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? Plus, it's easier to relate it to something else we may have heard. In this instance, it sounds exactly like the rhythm of the Mission Impossible theme. This is the main difference between Rhythm Heaven and other games. While traditional games show the gameplay cues solely visually, Rhythm Heaven builds these cues into the game's music and sound, so that it's easier to recognize when the beats fall. Let's look at the game Guitar Hero, for instance, where you press buttons on a guitar controller in time with colored circles on screen. In lower difficulties, these cues tend to clearly match certain parts of the music, and if you're familiar with the song, you will probably be able to guess when to hit the buttons. However, there's only so many buttons to press, and they're never an exact representation of the song playing, so if you've never played a certain level before, and you don't know whether the next cue is blue or yellow, you'd better hope you saw it. Rhythm Heaven approaches this in a very different way, where you can hear when the cues arrive and when cues may change. For example, let's look at the level Sumo Brothers. In this level, you're a sumo wrestler showcasing your sumo moves. For hand slaps and stomping, You press the A button in time with the beat, like so. But how do you know how fast to press the button, and when to switch between these moves? Let's listen to some more. Oh, we just matched the pace of your guide dog in the back. This means that if you're listening carefully to the audio, it's easy to tell how to play the game correctly, and to know what's coming next. It's also valuable practice in being able to relate the cues to the music in the back, because that's also telling you the rhythm. Now, let's look at what happens when we can't directly hear the rhythm. If you listen to almost any genre of music, I'm sure you've noticed this. Some may even say that having the same consistent rhythm played throughout a piece of music is just boring. Take these two beats for example. Now listen to this next one. I'm sure you'd agree with me when I say that the second beat is more interesting to listen to, and if you don't, I'd love to hear why in the comments below. But if our task is to press a button every downbeat, then it may be harder to do so over the second beat, where we can't always hear that downbeat. How then can you tell the pace? Enter your internal metronome, another huge part of your rhythm sense. It allows you to remember and keep the beat even when you can't hear it, maybe by counting the beats in your head or even by moving your body to keep track of it. Developing this internal metronome can help you navigate and stay in time with even more complex rhythms. And thinking about what this internal metronome does, we can see that if we want to develop it, we can practice using it in contexts where we can't always hear a consistent beat. For example, let's look at another level from Rhythm Heaven, Exhibition Match, to see how the game helps develop the player's internal metronome. Here, you have to hit a baseball that comes to you 4 beats after it's pitched. It's straightforward enough, and if you can pick up the beat like you did in Sumo Brothers from before, it seems like it would be a walk in the park. Let's look at the first part of the game. Notice that we can clearly hear the downbeats after it's thrown, so it's easy to count when we need to come in. Let's skip a bit ahead and see what it sounds like. Getting a little harder, right? The beat's there, just not highlighted anymore, so our internal metronome is slowly getting tested. Finally, near the end of the level, it sounds like this. If you weren't counting, good luck hitting that ball. Rhythm Heaven is clearly putting the player's internal metronome to the test, and by progressively making the level harder, it's being exercised more and more. However, the gameplay is still predictable. Hit the ball 4 beats after it's pitched. There's no guesswork, and it's always going to come 4 beats after. And if you use your internal metronome, it becomes a lot easier to play. This setup isn't really possible in other rhythm games. Let's take the game Taiko no Tatsujin, for example, where you have to hit different parts of a drum in time with circles on screen. Once again, the gameplay is primarily visual, so it's contingent on seeing the cues coming your way. However, because of that, you have less need to count any missing beats you don't hear. If we tried to, say, apply the exhibition match track to this game, yeah, you could still count 4 beats, but if you can see the cue coming on screen, you can get away with just hitting it when it gets in range. Quite the opposite issue to Guitar Hero, isn't it? That was too unpredictable, and this is too predictable. So, we can now pick up a beat and keep it regardless of whether we can hear it or not. Then, what about different rhythmic patterns? Rhythm is all about patterns. Putting different beat patterns together makes for more interesting rhythms. And if you're able to recognize when these patterns come up in the music, you'll find it easier to groove to them. Let's look at the previous two skills in another way. The reason we're able to pick up and stick with those rhythms is because it's a predictable pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The beats come after each other in a particular way and at a particular time. So if we remember how this pattern repeats throughout a song, it gets easier to pick up beats and keep them consistently. Now, when you're trying to replicate a pattern you're given, it turns out that it's easier to remember when you can hear the pattern rather than just see it. Think of a Simon Says toy, where you have to press the colored buttons in the same order you're told. The toy often has sound alongside the light up buttons, and each sound is a different note, like so. Remembering the melody is often much easier than remembering a series of colors, especially when you have to memorize a long series at a time. Rhythm Heaven uses this same concept in a really interesting way, one that I haven't seen in other rhythm games yet. Take a look at this clip of the level quiz show, where the host hits buttons a certain number of times and you need to repeat that number, like this. But something's missing, isn't it? Where's the music? It doesn't feel like a rhythm game at all. The game even says that nothing matters but the number of taps. Weird, right? Bear with me though, because there actually is a rhythm game here. Let's play along. Listen to this prompt and see if you can get the answer by counting the taps. Did you get it right? Now, try this next one, but if you haven't already, try remembering the pattern the host plays instead. Remembering the pattern is way easier than trying to count each of those fast hits, isn't it? That's the special part about this level. Recognizing the rhythmic patterns makes the game way easier. It indirectly teaches the player to hear patterns in even seemingly patternless moments, and the player is rewarded for doing so. In fact, in a later iteration of this game on the 3DS, the player is awarded a skill star for replicating the host's rhythm. Pretty cool, isn't it? Picking up rhythms, staying in time, and recognizing patterns. All crucial parts of rhythm sense. And it's this rhythm sense that allows players to succeed in both traditional and untraditional rhythm games. By teaching and developing rhythm sense through its levels, Rhythm Heaven not only becomes an effective educational tool, but it also sets itself up for beginners to be able to succeed regardless of their prior musical knowledge. The game doesn't expect you to be a professional to do well. In fact, it doesn't expect you to know anything about music. It's ready to teach you not only how to play, but how to do well. That's what separates it from the rest of the pack. And there's no wonder that newer rhythm games are trying to replicate this style, notable examples being Rhythm Doctor and Melatonin. Traditional rhythm games often tout the easy-to-pick-up, hard-to-master style, which, while simpler to understand at a glance, creates this huge skill barrier that can only be scaled by brute force practicing the gameplay. Rhythm Heaven abandons that to make an experience you can actually understand, predict, and feel, thus smoothing that skill barrier into a gentle hill. There's no guesswork or grinding with Rhythm Heaven. It's all about giving you that innate sense of rhythm. Finally, if you're to take away anything from this video, it's that Rhythm Heaven is really good. Thank you for watching.